Today we are going to look at point number 5. If you have not already done so, I would strongly encourage you to go and watch the series on points 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are powerful educational tools for you to better understand the terms of your franchise agreement. And as part of that, I'd also encourage you to go to the AAHOA website at AAHOA.com and download and print the materials and the tools that we have there. First, we have an AAHOA educational primer. The second is the 12 points questionnaire. And before we get into the specifics of point number 5, let me just say that in this post-pandemic world, the concept of fair franchising, and specifically AAHOA's 12 points of fair franchising, there has been a resurgence of interest. Many believe and presume that this is an issue solely between AAHOA's hotel franchisees and the franchisors, but in reality, it is more working towards a sustainable business model for the stakeholders and also to stabilize and improve the guest experience. Many hoteliers want to provide extraordinary guest experiences, but to do so, they need viable profit margins that allow them to invest in the business and deliver the best guest experiences. They also need options and choices for which guest experiences they are offering, and doing that at a fair and reasonable manner. Now, several of AAHOA's 12 points of fair franchising are focused on ensuring that the guest experiences are at the highest. So let us look specifically at point number 5, which is vendor relations, exclusivity, and affiliated companies as vendors. How could this impact the guest experience? Some might even argue that the free market should be efficient at keeping competition strong among the vendors for their products and their services. The free market should drive the competition to make sure the pricing is competitive and the quality is good for these services. But when this free market is disrupted, not only do we see higher prices, but we might not even get the best quality in the products and services. When franchisors actually limit the vendors that are providing these products and services, competition is frequently limited, especially when preferential treatment is given maybe to one or two affiliated vendors of that particular franchisor. When the franchisor then includes a requirement that these mandated and exclusive vendors must pay rebates, commissions, or kickbacks to the franchisors based on the products and services that the franchisees are purchasing, for obvious reasons, this suddenly raises the prices and it's no longer competitive. This is directly contrary to one of the biggest selling points that franchisors make to the franchisees. That's the concept that because of the franchisor's negotiated pricing ability, that they'll be able to get discounted prices for their goods and services. Regrettably, for many franchisees, discounted pricing on products and services has become one of the biggest myths in the franchise industry. Too often, the total number of vendors for a particular product or service is limited, and the competition among the vendors, for which are now mandated by the vendors and by the franchisors, no longer provides the greatest cost reduction to the franchisees. But at that point, it's one of the biggest reasons that the prices are higher, and this, of course, impacts the guest experience. These practices undoubtedly squeeze the margins of the franchisee and raise the prices for their guests that are staying in their hotels, all because of the drive for increased profits of the franchisors. So that's no longer fair, and it's one of the reasons we have point number 5. Now, it should be noted, of course, that not all hotel franchisors have unfair practices. But for those that do, this is one of the reasons that it's highlighted in AAHOA's 12 points of fair franchising, because of the potential to impact future franchisees as well as current franchisees. And what we want to do is educate you on what might be happening with your respective systems. You can then negotiate for better terms. If that is unsuccessful, you can work with the franchise advisory councils and raise awareness about such problems and seek important changes to make sure that the franchisors understand that this is not going to sustain the franchisees and their hotel brands if this continues. So with that background, let's jump into point number 5 and specifically what it says on vendor exclusivity, rebates, and affiliated companies as vendors. And the general concept is that franchisees should be free to buy conforming goods from any vendor, not just those mandated by the franchisor. So, to the extent that a franchisor truly believes it's necessary to mandate vendors for the purpose of establishing standards and specifications for the hotel brands, then they should strive at a minimum to ensure that the franchisees are receiving competitive prices or the best price guarantees by providing a list of 3 vendors who can provide these goods and services, and allowing the franchisees then to take advantage of the volume discounts arising from the group purchases of goods and services. But if 3 or more approved vendors do not provide that competitive marketing and that competitive pricing, then the franchisee should be allowed to apply for a waiver or for an option where the franchisee can locate products that actually provide competitive pricing and seek to have the franchisor approve those. In addition, since the franchisor sometimes will receive a significant amount of revenues from the mandated vendors in return for requiring the franchisees to purchase the goods and services from those vendors, franchisors should return those revenues to the franchisees and to the franchise system for the betterment of the whole brand and for the betterment of the guest experience. The franchisors should not receive and keep these commissions or these kickbacks from the vendors. And we want to ensure that this is addressed at every level. So with that, again, I would like to introduce you to a few other experts who can address why this is such an important point, and we will have them join us now.
Point number 5 is a very, very, very huge a problem for all of us, for all the franchisees. The vendor issues have astronomically become a problem financially, as well as with the service and the product quality that brands are forcing and mandating the franchisees. So giving you a perfect example was that back in 2018, 2019, right before pandemic, we just completed, and it's a 91-room property, and we did everything on our own. Us being also we have GC license, everything was kept in-house, and even then the cost of the PIP was about 1.8 million. This is keeping it in-house, mind you, at a 91-room property in a small town. And a lot of this cost associated is with the high cost from the products that are mandated by the brands that we are forced to use certain vendors. It's a very, very costly products pricing wise, where you can get a lot better product at a cheaper pricing with a better service. When a franchisee has an option which the franchisees can get a better quality product which exceeds the brand standard, right? And should be allowed to use that vendor, that the vendor will meet certain specs or exceed the certain specs of the brand. That is one thing that should be part of the requirement, that if the franchisee has a better option, then those options should be allowed and not forced upon to use the brand mandated vendor simply because the brands are getting kickbacks.
Together, we can work toward a more sustainable business model for all stakeholders and for a better guest experience. The 12 points will help us to achieve a stronger future together. We thank you, and we see you next time as we dive deep into point number 6. Thank you.